All right.
Peace and infinite blessings, Akashic family. Always good to connect. Oh, I know I say it every week. I say it every week, but we got a special one today, a super special guest today. But before we even get started, I'm so grateful for your support, so grateful for your feedback. Just such a blessing and honor to be able to bring folks into a conversation so that they can share their insight, their wisdom, their downloads as we continue to build this new earth, one conversation at a time, one practice at a time. So today's conversation, today we are going to talk to none other than Traydon Inspires, also known as Nameless. If you're not familiar with Traydon, Traydon is an awesome creator. He's a publisher, he's a writer, of course, theater, he's an actor. He does it all. So if hailing out of St. Louis, by the way, which is just a gem in and of itself. If you're familiar with folks from St. Louis, I mean, one that is really on the scene. One would be is it 19 Keys?
Oh yeah, yep. 19 keys
from St. Louis.
Yeah, we got the same path number.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of consciousness that's flowing and emanating from that St. Louis area. So it's super dope to be able to have Traydon Inspires here on this show. We're going to talk about creativity. He's got some wonderful gems to share with us about creativity, as he is one of the most creative beings I've had an opportunity to have a conversation with. So I am super blessed and enthusiastic about this opportunity to have this conversation. So none other Traydon, my brother, peace and blessings and welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, and I'm doing amazing. Today's this point of awareness is beautiful. It's amazing. I'm ready to discover, create, and manifest.
I can see. We done created a matching outfits because we're not planning this, but we're not planning this. By the way, this is just something that happened. But yo, it's it's so dope to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you. You know, before we actually hit the record button on today's conversation, we were just talking about, the idea of creativity. I know you're involved in so many different facets of creating, whether it's, it's through AI, whether it's through like motion, visual arts, whether it's, in writing, all these different spoken word, all these different avenues of creativity that you're able to explore. But I'm so intrigued by your concept of creativity and how you bring things into life. Can you share with the audience just your perspective on creating and bringing things into this dimension?
Right. So I had watched a video a while back about creativity, and it was talking about how creativity was a term that was coined by somebody, I forget, like 300, 200 years ago. And connected to that word was genius. And so what they were talking about in the video was that creativity and genius were terms that were created to basically talk about put another class of people higher than another class of people. And so that creativity in and itself was a term that was created that really, if you look deep within it, it doesn't really exist because everybody's in a sense creative. And then I looked at something from Neville Goddard, and Neville Goddard, who is a wonderful mind day mystic, he said that creativity is the constant discovering of more aspects of what already is. So creativity is more so you discovering and exploring. And Einstein said this when he was talking about you can't solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. So in a sense, when you raise your consciousness, you discover more of what already is, and therefore you are creative. So as long as you are constantly elevating your vibration, your frequency, then you are a creative being because you're constantly in a space of discovery. You're constantly in a space of the unknown. I don't know. And that's where this thing called creativity exists. And that's when you become a creative, being able to take something that people cannot see and manifest into reality, to take something that is nothing and to bring it into existence, just like this podcast, just like the computer, just like the phone.
Powerful. Powerful. I like how it takes the almost in substance like a reframe, right? As if there's nothing outside of ourselves to discover, that everything has already been given. excuse me, anything outside of ourselves to create. It's
Mm-hmm.
only up to us to discover it by changing our frequency, lifting
Mm-hmm.
our vibration. That's so beautiful and so in line with spiritual laws.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, that makes sense, right? And it takes the onus, the pressure off of you to feeling like you have to produce something when in substance you just have to reveal or radiate something that's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Almost in like I think Reverend Beckwith says it's a sense of beholding what has already been given.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful, my brother. That is beautiful. And so, how take us into, I guess, your creative process? I mean, what does that look like for you in terms of lifting your vibration and being able to, just reveal or discover what's already there?
Mm. So for me, my creative process, it connects with the name that I've now discovered about myself, which is nameless. Is that what happens? It's like a state of being.
Mm,
When I'm in a state of being of nameless, which means I have no place, no time, or anything like that, ideas from all place, all time comes to me.
mm,
And within that space, it's like a dance with the world and an invisible world, if that
mm,
makes sense. And with that, I'm able to take ideas from anywhere and put it into my own form. So
mm,
let's take poetry for instance. I put on my headphones or my earphones and I listen to a song
mhm,
and I get myself in a very deeply emotional state. And then from that state, I am just now distracted from the outside world. I'm
mm,
distracted from the problems or what's going on with this person or that person. My heart opens up, and now I'm feeling everything around me. And from that space, I'm also feeling worlds.
mm,
And then I'm able to translate what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing with my mind's eye onto the pen and paper
mm,
and be able to ground it into something that others can see.
mm,
This is the same thing with like motion art. I may look at an image that is still, that doesn't have any movement whatsoever, it's stagnant. And then I look at that image, I'm like, well, what if I add smoke to it? What if I make
mm,
the person move? What if I add another background to it? And I
mhm,
see it as I'm looking at the image of what it could be.
mm,
And then I put those things within the image and then I see what I already saw before. And I'm like, oh, this is what it is. And so this a lot of time my creative process, and it only happens most fluently when I'm in a state of nameless. Because the
mm,
moment I attach a perception or I attach a personality to it, then I become limited. I try to work within those expectations. And now I'm not able to deliver what has been given to me.
mm,
And it's the same thing that happens when I speak, when I do my inspirational speaking or when I freestyle. The moment I give myself the expectation of Traydon or all these different names, now I can't deliver in my perfectly imperfect fashion
mm.
that others can connect to more abundantly.
Brother, you just dropped the gem. You dropped the gem. I think that is such a for many people, that's such an insightful way, right? A different perspective, because oftentimes we limit ourselves by our
Mhm,
personality, right? By just saying
mhm,
the extent of who we are is this physical body, or the
mhm,
title or the roles that we've conferred upon ourselves or that other people conferred upon us. And so
mhm,
for you talking about, allowing Traydon to be here and just be the vehicle, right? Just
mhm,
to it's coming from the source of all possibilities, and
mhm,
you're just the message through it, right? The vehicle through which it's expressed is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, to get to that space where you say, you know what, I'm
mhm,
nameless, and that
mhm,
allows you to be almost like water, right?
mhm.
To
Right,
be like water and to
right.
flow and to move through different iterations, different expressions of how life
Mhm,
wants to express itself through you.
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
powerful, bro. That is powerful.
yeah.
What kind of work did you do to get to that space, to be able to surrender from what
Uh,
you see, to get to nameless?
it it was it's been a interesting, difficult, and I would say very much destructive journey. Destructive in the sense of you have to destroy who you think you are.
That part.
And that is some of the most hard things to do. One of the things that I've noticed as that has been my struggle is letting go.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I was a child, I was able to be free and different things like that. But once I realized that I can have a very fixated, uh, I can have a very fixated energy. So
Mm-hmm.
once I take on a name or I take on something, it becomes fixated inside of me. So then it's hard for me to let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was free, I was fixated on just doing and being in this space. But then once I got these expectations from the world, I became fixated on them and
Mm-hmm.
attached to them. And it went through a process of me constantly, in a sense, as Jordan Peterson says, burning off the dead wood that's no longer me.
Mm-hmm.
That came in situations where I got bullied, which came in situations where I had to get on stage and speak in front of hundreds of people and my legs shaking. I'm like, oh my gosh. Or like the relationships that I've been in, the friendships that I've had to basically help, and some of the things that I had to go through to be able to, in a sense, hold on to nothing. Most hardest thing in the world, because everyone calls you a name and then boom, that name pops in and you go back to density of what that name means to
Mm-hmm.
other people's perceptions of you. And so to be able to let that go and just decide that I'm going to be this at this moment, and then the next moment I'm going to be this, and then people's like, oh my gosh, you're inconsistent. You can't be this. Was a something that I very much had to I had to basically become aware of. And one of the ways that I freed myself is through writing in poetry.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a poet, or when I discovered that within my archetype,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to be anybody depending on what that poem required me to be. So it gave me permission to act as anybody if I created the poem that could allow me to do so. So it became my medium. My
Mm-hmm.
poem was expressing a confident person. If it was expressing this or expressing that, I was able to become that because that's what the poem required. And I was within actor mode, theater mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so then at a while of doing that, I watched actors and I started to research some of them, and I started to ask questions like, dang, like how do they go back to being themselves after they have played that script for so long? And then I had
Mm-hmm.
to ask myself that with my poems. And then I realized that my poems was changing my personality and changing
Mm-hmm.
me and how I saw myself. And so then I had to ask myself this question, like, who am I? And that became a recurring theme the more that I went through. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to release everything that's not me. And I'm doing that. And I'm like, that's like everything. What's going on here? Like, what do I do now?
What's
And
left?
and then it became the expectations of parents. Then it became even financial stuff because I was getting attached to that to tailor to my identity. And
Mm-hmm.
then after a while, I just was like, I'm going to world build now. I'm going to go back to what I did when I was child. I'm going to world build and create stories to where I can inhabit and go within on daily basis, and to be and help those to be my ground, to
Mm-hmm.
be my rock. And it has been a process of constant discovery as well as struggle, because every moment I could be, in a sense, Traydon, or I can, in a sense, be nothing. And it happens, it fluctuates, it's a flux. And
Mm-hmm.
with that comes creativity, with that comes destruction. And with that comes different answers when people ask me what I do or who I am. Like, my answer is never the same. And it's an interesting thing in business because I'm like, have a niche and everything like that. And I'm like, which personality you want, which niche you talking about? So I don't know what you, and so that's been one of the things that I've been figuring out within myself is that whole process. And so now when sometimes people ask me, they're like, what you do? I'm like, hey, I'm like a piano. I'm like, when whatever key you need me to play for whatever time period, that's what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to be articulate on what you need. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been the space I've been in lately, which now I'm trying to tailor it to the world I'm creating of business, the world I'm creating of relationships,
Mm-hmm.
because I can very much just shift into a whole nother person because I've created the story to be able to do so. So that's
Because
been
you're
like a
using all your gifts,
yeah,
right? And all those different gifts in different scenarios.
yeah,
For some people, that's like, oh my God, well, what do we call them? What label can we put it on them? Right?
yeah,
The ego wants to label something, and
yeah,
you're just like,
yeah.
I am.
And that's exactly how I was reading this. I got this book of symbolism because I always
Mhm,
like to go to the root of things. So I got this book of root words, symbolism, like dream symbolism. I study a lot around the subconscious mind and like archetypes. And I was reading this section about the shapeshifter,
mhm,
and it was talking about that the shapeshifter is the individual that despises the static form of reality.
mm,
It's
mhm,
always the thing that the hero wrestles with, the flux of consciousness. It's always wrestling with that, and it frightens the ego of basically stagnance and form.
mhm,
It's like, okay, it's like, be something, please. And that's one of the things that I realized for myself, that I had to realize, like, I very much can shapeshift
mhm,
into different forms and different things, and I have to accept that, and then figure out in a way how can I add value to others within
mhm,
that space of doing that. And it's been an interesting thing just discovering that, even the whole thing about in the book too that I was looking at, because to be honest, like me in this state, it can mess with your finances a little bit. And I was looking at this thing in the symbolism of a beggar, and I'm like, let me see
mhm,
what the symbolism of a beggar it is.
mhm,
And it said the symbolism of a beggar is, it's often the form that a god takes when it wants to incarnate on earth to be able to watch its followers. So like a
mm,
lot of gods would basically take the form of a beggar. And I was like, that is so interesting. I
mm,
would have never thought. And it kind of helped me to kind of ask myself that question, like, when I'm in that state, and aren't I just an incarnation of that? And
mm,
then I switch between them.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it was this question thing I'm wrestling with within the state of discovering and being multiple things at once.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful space to be in. Beautiful space to be in because you leave it open to such possibility
Mm.
for life to flow through you, right? I mean, we talked
Right.
about that analogy of water. Water finds its own level,
Hmm.
right? And goes into different shapes. And the interesting part about we talked about the ego is, when we're going through those transformations, the ego wants a label because it's like it thinks it's dying. It doesn't know the difference between transformation and death. And so it's like, oh my God, just give me a label so I know what I am. All the while, all you're saying is I am.
Mm.
You're saying I am. I'm infinite possibility, which is
Yeah.
an amazing space to be in. Talk about so the name, the identity of nameless and the different paths that you've taken with it is such a powerful way to identify yourself. What kind of creative avenues have you explored uh, with nameless and putting that into this dimension where people can interact or take participate in your art?
Mm. So being nameless gives me the ability to be a beautiful stranger. Gives me the ability to be able to uh not be confined by what who I was the moment before, and to
Mm,
really be present with people, and sometimes not even ask people their names, because when I see myself as nameless, I often see other people as nameless.
mm,
And so one of those things it gives me the ability to do is to be able to just be somebody that you meet on the street and you're like, oh my gosh, who are you? And I'm like, and I just walk away. It's one of those things that creates a sense of a mystery and wonder in the same way that when I get messages, when I get downloads, when I get inspirations, that it does that for me.
Mm,
So within that ability of creativity, it gives me a sense, it gives others a sense of unpredictability and wonder at uh, who will this embodiment be in the next moment that's different from the last?
mm,
And how can it allow me to free myself from the things that I have called myself?
mm,
And so for a lot of things, I become that symbolism for people
mm,
so that they're able to embody and be who they want to be. And that's one of the reasons why at the end of my name is inspires, because inspire means breath, to breathe
mm,
into. So my very existence is breathing into others and my just me being, which causes them to want to be as well.
mm,
So some of the creative ways that it has helped me develop that embodiment is through storytelling. I very much always wrote in a poetic form,
mhm,
but lately I've integrated it into storytelling. So actually like writing it in like novel form and things like that, which I didn't know I could do, or I didn't remember that I
mm,
could do it. And so it was something that really begged me interesting when I had done that, because now I had the ability to realize like, hey, you thought you had yourself down pat. Well, boom, did you know you can write stories? And then now I'm working on motion art where I'm able to make art, make things move and
mm.
play around with that. Like, boom, did you know you could do that as well? And then somebody just taught me dancing the like a little dance, and then I started dancing. I watched myself in the mirror. I said, "Wait, I got some rhythm I could dance to." Boom! Did you know you can do that as well? And then
Keep tapping in.
I'm like, what in the world? And then like people had me doing voice acting. I'm like, well, boom. Well, did you know you could voice act too? It's like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. Okay, what else I'm gonna figure it out about Nameless? Like, what's gonna happen next? So it always it always gives me that ability of discovering, and then boom, it turns into a TikTok channel. I'm like, did you know you
Mhm.
were going to create that? I had no freaking clue the day before. I was going to create a TikTok channel just dedicated to that. Well, boom, did you know you were just going to do audios and people were going to like you just talking with emotion, with the
Mhm.
motion art you created? And so it gives me it gives me that ability of in a sense that I'm creating a story while in the story,
Mm,
because I never know. I never know what's gonna happen. And it also uh gives me the creative ability to live my life as an art that people sometimes don't understand, but
mhm,
they appreciate.
mhm,
They may not understand it, but they appreciate it. Sometimes it calls me to do things that society would not deem some things that you do.
mhm,
And that's one of the things that I've had to figure out, is that I'm playing a role.
mm,
No matter if, let's say that I am late to work, which work means love made visible.
mm,
If I'm late to work, the place I have to go to be able to work, and I'm late there, well, I can put upon myself the name of being guilty. But
mm,
what if that art was supposed to happen so that someone at that space had to learn how to maneuver and be flexible when one of their employees or somebody's not there,
mhm,
or had to learn how to deal with a situation they never dealt with before? How do
mhm,
I not know that I am a vehicle, or I am a character within a story to help them grow in some way? But I see it as, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm not responsible because I'm late.
mhm.
So it's one of those things that I've been asking myself the question with is, I have no clue. I have no clue. Maybe I didn't go to work because there was an accident that I was going to get in, that if I did that I didn't go, but because I didn't go, I didn't get in an accident. How do I know? Have
Mhm,
no clue. So I now move with that same essence in
mhm,
everything that I do, and so it's giving me an openness to be able to just be. Because I watch movies all the time. The person who's late in the movie doesn't sit there after the movie and say, I was late in that movie, man. I feel
mhm,
so bad about it. No, they were acting. And they did
mm,
that for the plot, for the character development of another character and even
mhm,
themselves. So I work that same way with me.
mm.
And it's been one of the things that has freed me, but also has given me the ability to look at life from a different angle and turn it more so into a art and a story.
Mm, mm. Art in the story. I love it because you move with a sense of non-attachment to it as well, right? To be
Mhm.
able to show up in that space, I think it requires, as you talked about earlier, letting go, all right, the
Mhm.
surrender piece, and the open heart,
Mhm.
right? Because your heart got to be open in order to receive to receive all the downloads, to receive
Mhm.
all the creative energy that is flowing through you. That's a beautiful space to be in. You talked about the uh, kind of like societal pressures of doing things a certain way or all those. I think when we get into that space of dissolution, when we opt out of the prescribed path of doing things a certain way based off of, maybe things we learned from our parents or things that we picked up along the way, to your point earlier, we go through this phase of where things are, great. We got that spiritual lightning rod that comes
Mhm.
through, and then there's some dissolution, right? The
Mhm.
dissolution of the old paradigm of the ways things used to be, while the new is emerging, right? And it seems at times like it's turbulent and
Mhm.
chaotic. But the
Mhm.
beauty of it is the growth, the transformation, that in between space where there's that everything seems like it's breaking down. But I believe that part of the journey, that sweet part, that sweet bitter part at times, right?
Mhm.
Because it is a little bit chaotic. That is the beauty of being able to create from that space that touches the hearts of so many people because they're inspired. They're inspired
Mhm.
by the freedom. They're inspired by, the work that you've put in to get to
Mhm.
that space. And I think deep
Mhm.
down inside, when people see that light in you, they see that you've made it from that space of dissolution and still
Mhm.
kept your heart open and still willing and in the state of letting go and surrender to inspire
Mhm.
other people. That is such a beautiful space to be in, man. And I salute you and
Mhm.
I commend you for that sacred yes, because that yes, just saying yes in and
Mhm.
of itself, I think opens the door for you to be so creative and create the things that you've done. I mean, in different venues. It's not like you're just
Mhm.
sticking to one form. You're using all your gifts, my brother.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And more that you're discovering along the way, right?
Right. Right.
That's
Right.
so dope. That's so dope. I know you got
Mhm.
a project that you're working on in terms of oracle cards and
Mhm.
writing a book. Can you give some information? Can you share about that project?
Yeah, so I'm a part of this amazing project with this woman named Dolly, the Circle of the One, which has is the reason that sparked Nameless. And what it is it's an incorporation of a book of stories of both what's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Of both extraordinary, ordinary people that have accepted the essence, the oracle, the spirit of who they truly are,
Mm,
and are looking and are striving and discovering and also putting them on oracle deck cards to inspire others to be in that same space.
mm,
So, with that, everyone is writing a chapter on how they became the essence of who they truly are within spirit, within God or goddess, and all those different uh, archetypes.
mhm,
And within that, it is something that is going to that I see is going to affect millions of individuals, millions of people to tap into who they are. And with that project, as far as the story that I'm writing, it is about Nameless, and it's actually the story that inspired me to more so embody this space. Because as I wrote the story, I became that individual. I
mm,
remembered who I was. And it
okay.
caused me to embody Nameless a lot more and spark all of these creative assets that I did not remember that I had.
Mm. Your
Yeah.
writing is like your vibrational alignment. That's your attunement. That's like your
Yeah.
evidence. It becomes your evidence for the laws to to
Mhm.
work. That's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
almost like a prayer, right?
Yeah. 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 It's definitely. It's definitely that, and a lot of the time it's that, or it's my speaking. It's
Mm-hmm.
my speaking. That's why a lot of the time I have to watch, in a sense, what I say. I have to
Mm-hmm.
watch what I say. Sometimes I say things I'm not supposed to say, and I catch myself saying, "No, you can't say that. It's going to become prophecy. Don't say that."
Oh yeah.
I had to be very careful with myself because I realized that the very words that come out of my mouth breathe life into people.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point when I was in high school, my words were life or death to some people who were very suicidal.
Wow.
So the things that come out of my mouth have caused tears, have caused lives to change, and just me sometimes walking into a room.
Mm-hmm.
So I hold my writing as well as my speech very sacred because it is something that has created my worlds and that have created new worlds for other people.
Mm. That's a powerful, powerful lesson. As creators, I think sometimes people don't understand the power of their words, the power of their
Hmm.
words, both written and spoken. But
Hmm.
it's funny. One of the things I try to impress upon my kids is, to speak life into people and into yourself.
Hmm.
And I remember when my daughter was maybe, I guess she was like 6 or 7 years old,
Hmm.
and she was, just playing around, and she's doing some old crazy annoying stuff. I was like, Nina, I'm gonna turn your arm green tomorrow, right? I said, I'm gonna turn your arm green tomorrow. I said, Daddy, you can't turn my arm green. I said, watch, I will turn your arm green tomorrow. She went to camp, and later on that day, she came home and she was like, oh my God, Daddy, look. And she had green paint all up and down her arm. And I was like, listen, that is the power of words. And for now, she understands. She doesn't say anything that she doesn't want to experience. And so that was one of the hilarious lessons about being able to speak things
Uh,
into existence. But our words are so powerful as creative beings, and for you specifically having that gift of being able to write, and then through your voice to be able to create an image for people, I think it amplifies the experience of our creative ability. So salute on that.
yeah, yeah. It's that's why I've been studying root words,
Hmm.
etymology, which is the root of words, so that I know, like, at its base form, what does the word mean?
Hmm.
Because if you look up cymatics, which is which cymatics means wave, and it
Hmm.
shows you the visual representation of what words, what music, what sound can do. You see that it makes it geometrical shapes. It makes symmetrical shapes when you attune a sound to a certain frequency.
Hmm.
So when you hold yourself at that same thing and you speak on that frequency, you make those same alignments within yourself.
Hmm.
So a person holds their words like that, and holds the people accountable around them for the words that comes out their mouth, then they will more so consent and embody a higher vibration of who they are at an amazing rate. If I was to every day go to a place for an hour and go into this place, and whatever I say I am, you have to pretend that I'm that person, and whatever you say you are, I have to pretend you are that person, and we do that for an hour every day. Eventually you will become that person.
Yes.
You will become it, because I've guided and helped you assume that person. And they showed this within I forget the psychological experiment, but they put quote unquote dumb kids in a high accelerating class,
Hmm.
and then they put the kids who were accelerating in a quote unquote dumb people class. And because of the expectation of the teachers,
Hmm.
they accelerated higher than the other kids.
Mm.
Just from the expectation. I'm pretty sure the words they were using to be able to encourage those kids were different. The attention
Mhm.
they were given was different. That's the power of what words and what world building, world crafting does, is that it literally shifts the perception of you yourself, and it shifts the perception of the world around you and who you are.
Mm. Mm. The intention behind it as
Mm,
well, the words and the intention of it, that
mhm,
transforms everything. It reminds me of a story. So I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was at the park, and this is a park I've been going through for many years. That's where I do my yoga, my meditation, qigong, whatever it is. I do my practice. I do it at the park, and
Mhm.
I've been, like I said, it's almost a decade now. And when I'm there, whether it's the wintertime and they're, they got the snow blowers out, or in the spring where they're, cutting the grass or whatever, the workers now, they stop the machines while I'm meditating. And so the other day, one of the workers coming up to me, he's like, Andre, I feel so bad. He said, I'm sorry. Every time I come over here and I see you meditating, I feel bad because of the noise. I said, hey, no worries, man. I said, it's part of the practice, right? I said, it's part of the practice. It makes me go deeper into it. And then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. We created something here. I just said yes to going out and doing my practice in that space
They made
because
us
I wanted to commune with nature.
they
But he now sees it as a sacred space
yeah.
because I'm there meditating. So he's
Yeah.
giving reverence to the energy as well. And
Literally, yeah.
yeah. And I was
It
like, well, we created something here.
that's it's literally how it works. Like sometimes I've my friends and different people that I walk around because I've been doing a lot of business stuff and I've been really integrating and getting my productive stuff.
Hmm.
They hold my time very valuable now, even
Hmm.
more so. They're like my I went to one of my friends' birthday parties
Hmm.
and everything like that. And then like the fact that you're here is a beautiful thing. I know you have a lot of work and stuff that you do, but the fact that you were here, we appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? And they held that very sacred that I was there, despite that they know that I have a lot of stuff that I do. And I
Hmm.
found that very interesting that when you hold yourself accountable to who you truly are, people will come around and they would take that seriously. I remember when I was first meditating and when I did it at my mom's house, and she would kind of walk in like, what you doing? And everything's like that. After a while of me doing it, she would walk in and I would notice because I heard the door. She would walk in and then she would look at me. She'd see I'm in a meditate and then close the door and
Hmm.
then wait until I'm done and then speak to me about whatever she wanted to speak to me about. So it really shifts people to really hold yourself as sacred,
Hmm.
to be able to do that. It's the same thing where if you're around a lot of people do this around religious people where they don't curse or do anything like that. They hold them still they respect and they hold reverence for how their embodiment. They're like, and if they do, they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm saying
Hmm.
it's fine, it's fine. So the more that we hold ourselves within that space of who we truly are, people will help uphold that version of you.
Hmm.
They will help uphold that version of you. So if I become the individual of nameless and I make that be known to individuals that I hang around and things like that, they will start to associate that with me. So if I
Hmm.
do something happens, oh, he's in one of his embodiments right now. Oh, he's within his creative space right now. Don't bother him. He's doing something and that's what people will start to do. And if you associate that with a place, when they see you in that place with that embodiment, they will start to uphold that. Like, oh, he's in his creative space right now. We're gonna wait, or we're gonna
Hmm.
do this. So it really takes the ability to stay focused and aligned and concentrated on that in which you want to be. And the world will reshape itself to help you see that more and more.
Yes.
It's
Yes. That part.
yeah.
That part. It will reshape itself, and that vibration for some people is going to be contagious as well because they'll see themselves in you,
Mm-hmm.
mirrors of one another, and that will, to your point earlier,
Mm-hmm.
inspire them to do the work. It reminds me of it. You ever heard that 100 monkey? I think it's the 100th monkey experiment, where there was some researchers in Japan, and they used to go to this island in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
where there was a bunch of monkeys. And they used to drop off these sweet potatoes. And
Mm-hmm.
so the monkeys love the sweet potatoes, but they didn't like all the sand on them, right? So one of
Mm-hmm.
the baby monkeys took the sweet potato and took it to the water and
Mm-hmm.
rinsed off the sand and started eating it that way. And it was a lot better. And
Mm-hmm.
so some of the monkey's parents saw it And then they's like, oh, well, that's the right way to do it. So they started rinsing it off. Some of the other
Mhm.
older monkeys didn't do it. They was like, we ain't trying that yet. That ain't for us. But
Mhm.
after a while, a critical mass of monkeys started doing this. It became a norm amongst the monkeys on that island. And they don't have a specific number, but they said when that critical mass built up to that 100th monkey, things in that community changed, but also in the distant island where the researchers were doing the same experiment, dropping off sweet potatoes to the monkeys, those monkeys
Mhm.
started rinsing off their sweet potatoes in the water. That whole concept of morphic resonance, that when we build up a certain critical mass of a practice, it becomes common among the collective consciousness for us to embody it.
Mm.
But to you, to your and to the work that you're doing, the sacred yes of one, the sacred and the willing discovery of one person is enough to contribute to that collective consciousness where that information becomes available to all who are willing. I
Mm.
think the key is the willingness part, right? The willingness to move around this space with an open heart. I know for brothers in particular, there is the concept of strength. The
Mhm.
concept of strength, particularly black men in general, we're looked at as men who are strong, as aggressive, sometimes even it's over sexualized, right?
Mhm.
But the concept of understanding what strength truly is, to me, as I continue down this path of spiritual growth and development, I'm realizing it takes real strength to move along this, in this world with an open heart, to move with an open heart, to make yourself available and receptive to all this creative energy that wants to express itself, whose job is to express itself uniquely as you, as Nameless, as Andre, all
Mm.
of these different energies that want to do it, but our heart has to be open. And so the strength that you exhibit in being nameless is phenomenal. It's phenomenal because you make yourself available in a way where it requires vulnerability. I
Mm.
think true strength is being able to be authentic and to be
Mhm.
vulnerable and to really thrive in the uncertainty. Because
Mm.
I think that's the sweet spot. That's
Yeah.
the sweet spot. That is the
Yeah.
sweet spot.
Yeah, it definitely is. It reminds me of I said this to an individual yesterday that it's like being on the edge of a cliff and like looking down. It's this both this excitement and basically like this fear, but it's this fearful excitement that you feel on the edge. And it's like when you live on that edge, you're highly conscious.
Mm-hmm.
You're highly conscious on that in that space, and when you hold yourself in that space creatively, and you're constantly able to do that, it is it can be one of the most difficult things to hold your center in that space. But if you do so, a lot of beautiful things will open up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your body itself becomes a lot more sensitive. Pain becomes a lot more heightened. Life itself becomes a lot more heightened.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, in a sense, embody that more and more, because one of the things that being nameless has done is it gives me access to a lot more of all of my energy.
Mm.
And for a person that doesn't know how to direct that and know how to hone that,
Mm-hmm.
you can destroy yourself. And a lot of people do this with alcohol, with eating, and different things like that. Like me, one of my ways, like when I'm in that space and I'm like, whoa, this is a lot. I'll be eating. I sometimes I be eating. Sometimes I eat some food. I'm like, I'll be, are you there? You hear me? People, I'm like, man, I'm love some pasta right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta be in that space, or I'm like, I'll eat give me some good food.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have these things that they do to sometimes distract from having this outpour of energy, in the same way that if you're not used to $1 million and you win a lottery and you get $1 million, like, oh my gosh, what do I do all this? You try to spend it all so
Mm-hmm.
that you go back to your comfortable space.
Correct.
When a person suddenly has access to all their energy, they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? And so they figure out ways to deplete it very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You were talking about Qigong earlier. That's a practice of being able to hold your center, open your heart, and be able to, that's a cultivation practice. And
Mhm.
now you need to learn how to move that energy.
Mhm.
And if you know how and you cultivate it, well, now you can allow that energy to make maneuvers and ripples within the space around you and
Mhm.
within uh, local, non-local places,
That
things
part.
of that nature. In the same way that, jokingly enough, we weren't the same aesthetic.
Mm.
like,
That's
like
it.
I usually wear my blue one, and today I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna wear my black one today. Like, you know what I'm saying? It happens in interesting. It happens in interesting ways like that. And
But
if a person's able to expand their energy and be open to having all of who they are in within their body and be able to integrate that, you'll be able to make shifts very beautifully and be the most beautiful thing.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. The shifts. Having access to all your energy, to all your gifts. It's available. It's the practice, right? It's the practice
Mm,
of daily intentional living where we make ourselves aware of the choices that we're making, of the decisions that we're making, and the context from which we're making them decisions, right?
mm,
Yeah, I think it could be something where it's that paranoia where, oh my God, something's out to get me,
mm,
or that pronoia where everything is working for my good. And so I come into an alignment with my
mm,
true self, with my nameless nature,
mm,
and allow that to flow through me. That's a beautiful thing. And it leads us to a segment in the show where we talk about the practice, the practice in which, we always say you're always practicing something. Fear,
mm,
doubt, or worry. What life is for me, everything's working for my good. There's a practice that's going on, whether we're aware of it or not, intentional or unintentional. So for the listeners, what are some of the practices that you utilize, the tools that you have in your toolbox or your tool belt to help you continue to grow and unfold and create or discover?
mm. So one of them I was actually practicing a moment ago is because I practice energy cultivation practices, and one of them that I hope I can explain this right. One of the things I do is I breathe. I open my heart, so I breathe and I become aware of my heart space, and I breathe deeper, so down to my chest, down to my core.
Mm-hmm.
And as I expand and breathe from that space, if you do it correctly and if you're sensitive to the energy, you will almost feel the energy literally on the surface of your skin everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I like to explain it is if it feels like an exciting fear,
Mm.
because it's the same feeling. And a lot of times you get where like something scary happens
Mm-hmm.
and like your whole body like tenses up. But in this case, it's an excitement with it. And if you do it, you'll feel it.
Mm.
And it's one of the things where if you can hold that throughout the day, if you can continue to hold that, like you open up in a big way. That's one of the things that I do. And it's one of the things that happens a lot of the time unconsciously, which goes to my other practice, which is writing.
Okay.
I turn on music and I write whatever comes to me, or I take an image that I feel connected to, and I write based off of that image, or I use
Mm.
my phone and I text based off that image. And that's one of the practices that I do. Or sometimes when I'm curious about something, uh, my mentors taught me a way to be able to like search things up on the internet. So I search something that I'm interested in. So yesterday I was looking up path numbers,
Uh-huh.
and like I would just read because I love reading. I read and then I'll find something that like that pulls me, and I'll write it down. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'll find something else that pulls me and write it down. And I'm in this constant process of like excited about what next will I find that fills me. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll write it down, and then I would keep that. And sometimes I will turn that into a poem, or I'll turn that into something else I'm writing about. So I'm going deeper
Mm-hmm.
and deeper
Mm-hmm.
and deeper. So like yesterday, for instance, because I got my notebook in front of me,
Yeah, yeah.
well, one of my things is I was writing about path number, and I was looking at the path number 9.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
one of the things I had written down was from the article I was reading was, you are able to achieve anything in which you feel passionate, purpose, or desire. And I'm like, I read everything, and I wrote that one sentence down.
Okay.
And then I read something else that said, leave nothing unfinished. I was like, ooh, let me write that down.
Mm-hmm.
Role of giver. Ooh, let me write that down. Then versatility. I am versatile. And I wrote
Mm-hmm.
that down. Then it said some of the things I may struggle with: sense of identity, acquiring wealth, a status, establishing a clear base. And I said, ooh, let me write that down. And then I wrote down special. It was talking about you should specialize in something. I said, okay. Oh, I specialize in world building. So I'm asking questions. I'm reading the article. And then I wrote down, I put like a little arrow and I'm like full circle,
Mm-hmm.
because my world building is a full circle for people. And it goes into the path number 9, full circle. And then I
Yes.
wrote down finisher next to it. And then I wrote down, I was just, before we got on here, I was looking up arcs. Like, what is an arc of an anime story? And so I wrote down curve of character development.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make a content arc on social media? So like what I do is I'm having, I best way I can put this, I'm having a conversation with the words on the page, with the words
Okay.
that I'm reading. I'm having a conversation with it. So where it's like it's speaking to me and I'm like, I like that. Let me write that down.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ask a question and then I write that down. Then I get an answer. And then I go to another article when I do that. And I'm having this conversation. Sometimes it's not with an article. Sometimes I'm having it with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I very
Mm-hmm.
much speak with myself because me being nameless, I can project an aspect of myself outside of me via what
Mm-hmm.
children do with imaginary friends and have a full blown conversation and be able to like write down what I'm getting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so that's one of the things I do as a practice. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the time I'm so good at having conversations with actual people, because I practice all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is a practice that I do. And the whole time my heart is open. I'm probably listening to some music. So I'm just like floating through worlds. Like I imagine like some of the tabs I go through, they're like different worlds. I
Yeah.
might have like 5 books in front of me. Like I'm literally going from this book. Oh, I remember that. I'm going from this book. I'll get a book behind me. Oh, I remember that from this book. And then I put it all down on a piece of paper and I'm writing it. Sometimes I don't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
I just write it because I realize that the moment I write it, it's incorporated within my DNA
There
and
we go.
I'll remember. And that's one of the things I remember with me is that when I write something down, at some point I will need it or I will remember that I wrote it down.
Yep. Yep.
So that's one of my practices that has been something I've done for a long time now.
That's dope. It's beautiful. It's like contemplative study, right? Coupled with like your journaling, your writing, while your heart is open, and you're constantly creating based off of the things that are, you know, being coming to you. That's
Mhm.
that's crazy, man. And then once again, it's fueled by you having an open heart to be receptive and being in that flow, that state of flow,
Mhm.
to go through different worlds, creating new worlds while you're doing it. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. So some of the practice you use, breath work. You talked about writing or the journaling, creative research, and ideas. Writing down your ideas. I think it's so dope to have a book of ideas,
Mhm.
just things that come through you, and it may not be for you specifically, but just something to that wants to be created, or a seed
Mhm.
that has been planted. And right, I've seen that before where people have just books of ideas. I just jot down ideas in my journal
Yeah.
and just keep them going. Because sometimes you may come back to it at an appointed time. It may
Mhm.
not be for this moment, but it could just be
Yeah.
that seed.
Yeah. Because you're tapped in at all times. So you that idea may be for you 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there is aspects of myself that I'm working on within the discovery of me, and I've probably been working on consecutively on and off for years now, and then finally it's like, oh, full circle. This is
Yep.
what it was used for. And that happens all the time. Or I get an idea and I'm like, am I supposed to use this? And then I'm like, oh, that's ideas for you. Here, I didn't did a whole paper on this idea. I was
Exactly.
supposed to give it to you. And so a person, you really never know. And that's the essence of story of I like Easter eggs or
Mm,
different mysteries that may come to you. And it's the also the respect for what's coming to you,
that part.
to have the respect enough to write down what is coming to you via insight idea, and through the imagination so that it doesn't stop coming to you. And
Yes.
that's one of the things that Neville talks about, is that you take your imagination very seriously, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
That's right.
So I learned to take my imagination very seriously and write down what comes to me, play around with it, and things of that nature. Because what I imagine it can manifest within my body. If I imagine something fearful, it will manifest in my body, manifest in my world. So I take my imagination very seriously, to the point where I have a character within my story that I have given the qualities of the imagination to.
Mm,
So that I refer to my imagination, I refer to that character.
mm,
And that's something I do with everything that I have respect for, in the same way that people have done this with deities, where they have given it a name as respect for what it does for their life. So for my
mm,
imagination, I've created I've created a storyline for, whether it's for finances, I've created an individual for that. And that's what Napoleon talked about with the rolling ambassadors. So I've created those for things that I take seriously. I have a version of myself who is the writer, that's the prophecy teller, that I have a name for, to take these things more serious and to make it to where I can, in a sense, de-associate with them and have them outside of me and talk to them as if they're a person,
mm.
the same way that people do with imaginary friends, which a lot of us should get back to.
That part. That part. Taking the thoughts, turn them in thought forms,
Mhm.
creating experiences from them. It's all consistent. You talked about imagination. If you don't lose it, you lose it.
Mhm.
Law of circulation, right? You only get to keep what you give,
Mhm.
right? So if you get a thought, but you don't give attention to it, right? If you get a inspiring thought that comes through and you don't give attention to it, you'll lose it, right? And you'll eventually start to close yourself off from that inspiration that's always speaking, that broadcast that is always broadcasting.
Mhm.
So paying attention to it, writing it down, and just putting it out there and allow it to. It may, like I said, it may not be for you specifically, but it's important to pay attention to it because it keeps that energy open, keeps you open and
Mhm.
to receive and to give, which is beautiful. Which is beautiful. Traydon, man, I enjoyed this conversation. This was something that you touched on so many different points. You enlightened me in terms of the idea of no longer just creating, but
Mhm.
discovering what has already been given and moving around with an open heart and being nameless. I think
Mhm.
that's something that we all can identify with.
Mhm.
Can all identify with. I know we talked about some of the other projects. What else do you have on the horizon that you can share with the viewers that we can continue to tap in to what you got going on?
So right now, I'm experimenting with a venture that's come to me, which is being able to create an immersive experience via world building on TikTok. So I have a TikTok channel called Traydon Inspires I. That's EYE. And on that channel, I am asking questions. I'm doing thought experiments, and I'm creating worlds to where if I create something that's like, here, pick a door, and you pick a door, and then I take you through that door, and then ask you a question, and then you answer the question, and I take you through another door or another question, and developing a world based off of the answers and the things that the individual wants. That's what I'm doing on one of my pages. On my other one, Trade on Inspires One, I have been tapping into giving inspirational and encouraging words to help individuals throughout the day embody more of who they are, tap more in, and be able to remember who they truly are. So I use them pages both within alignments of each other. So I may have a post off of one world building, connect with the voice on the other page. So I'm playing around with the mechanics with that
Mhm.
and getting that going. And as I said earlier, motion art is something that I'm doing, uh, helping to make the images come to life
Mhm.
and be able to give you another sense of looking at the world, as
Mhm.
well as AI art is something that I've been tapping into very much to see things that I always wanted to see, but never had someone paint it out for me. So I'm like, hey, let me use it as a prompt and see if I
Mhm.
can create it. So that's something else. And one of the big things that I'm looking forward to is this venture that came to me is called Ethera Games,
Hmm.
which is the encompassing of everything I just mentioned, where I'm going to be taking individuals through an experience of a new language that I'm looking to develop, that I am developing, worlds that I'm looking to develop, and incorporation of individuals and people to be put inside of a book as characters, as embodiments within a story that I'm creating, as well as games
Mm.
to help people remember who they truly are. Because I'm a gamer, and I realized that I learn best when I turn things into a game or an
Hmm.
adventure or even watch a movie about it. So those are some things that I'm tapping into.
Wow. Some powerful stuff that is changing our built environment, the way people will see the world as we continue to create a new earth,
Hmm.
a new uh, just a new paradigm for people to, once again, I love how you phrase it, to remember who we are,
Hmm.
to remember who we are. That's what this channel was about. It's about being a way shower to help
Hmm.
people to remember who they are, to wake up to their limitless potential. You know, being nameless is such a beautiful concept, such a beautiful way, state of being. And so we honor you. We give thanks for you, for the work that you're doing, and for continuing to inspire and be a way shower for all the beings here. So, Traydon, my brother, it's been an absolute wonderful conversation. I appreciate you. We'll put all your social media information in the description of the video, and continued success in every venture, everything that you're doing. Appreciate you, my brother.
All right, you as well.
Shay.